Okay, hey, how you doing? I'm Kevin. You're here for the Astros 100. There are games you remember because they were huge, loud, and full of famous men doing famous things. And then there's games like this one. Saturday night in the Astrodome, 12,000 people, one run, one hit allowed, 86 minutes. Dave Roberts against Steve Carlton. And somehow the whole thing feels less like a baseball game and more like a dare. Blink and you miss it. Look away for a second, the whole night's gone. Houston wins 1 to nothing, and Roberts throws the only one hitter of his major league career. The Astros go to 65 and 60. The Phillies fall back to 63 and 63. Because baseball is cruel, Carlton's brilliant as well, but he loses. What I love about this game is that it hides. It's not advertising itself. It's not a postseason game. It's not a no-hitter, and it's not a famous October myth. It's just a man working quickly, throwing strikes, trusting his defense, and beating one of the greatest left-handers who ever lived. That's enough for me. That's more than enough for me. Welcome back to the Astros 100. I'm documenting one game per player until I reach 100. Today, it's Dave Roberts. Oh, come on. August 24th, 1974, Astros and Phillies from the Astrodome. Houston wins it 1 to nothing, and Roberts gives you the kind of game that can disappear in history. Nobody bothers to stop and point at it. That's what we're doing here. We're stopping and we're pointing. We're paying attention to one of the fastest, sharpest, strangest little masterpieces in Astros history. 86 minutes was the fastest game in Astros history. The Astros come into this night as a good but somewhat uneasy team. They enter the game at 64 and 60, and this win moved them to 65 and 60. They're not leading the NL West, and they're not really built like the big beasts of the decade. But they are respectable, dangerous, and full of interesting parts. Cedar Cedeno, Bob Watson, Doug Rader, Lee May, Greg Gross, Don Wilson, Larry Dierker, and Dave Roberts. Houston finishes 81 and 81, fourth in the NL West, in Preston Gomez's first season as manager. Greg Gross won the Sporting News National League Rookie Player of the Year, while Doug Rader and Cedeno would both win Gold Gloves. The Phillies are in a more emotionally volatile place. On August 1, they're 54 and 50, tied for first in the NL East, which tells you how real the optimism felt. But by the time this game is played, they've come off a rough road swing through Atlanta, Cincinnati, and now Houston. They enter this game one game above 500 and lose it. Then they lose again the next day, it'll fall below 500. And that's where they finish the season, 80 and 82, third in the NL East, 8 games behind the Pirates. The club was already improving under Danny Ozark, but this is still that awkward stage before the Phillies become the Phillies of the late 1970s. This game sits in a very good, dramatic pocket. Houston's trying to prove it belongs in the conversation. Philadelphia is trying not to let a promising season leak away. Neither team is playing for immortality that night. They're playing for footing, and that matters. Baseball in late August of 1974 is crowded and unstable in exactly the way a good pennant race should be. The Dodgers and Reds are wrestling for the NL West. Los Angeles beat St. Louis 3-0 on the same day, and Cincinnati's still trying to chase them down. In the East, the race is so unstable, the Pirates jumped into first place the very next day by sweeping a doubleheader in San Diego. Around the same stretch, Nolan Ryan just struck out 19 Red Sox on August 12th. The Cardinals had just acquired Claude Osteen on August 15th. David Lopes had a ridiculous 15 total base game on August 20th. So the sport is full of headline material. It's full of noise and full of people kicking the door down. In the middle of that, down in the dome, Dave Roberts and Steve Carlton put on a game so fast and so clean, it barely seems to belong to the same era. This is part of the appeal here. The baseball world that week had fireworks available, and this game chose a knife. This makes me mad for one simple reason, and we used to understand that not every baseball game needed to apologize for being baseball. This game lasted 1 hour and 26 minutes, not because the hitters were impatient idiots, and not because the umpires were rushing, not because there wasn't tension. It lasted 126 because Roberts worked fast, Carlton worked fast, the ball was put in play, the defense stayed awake, and everybody more or less behaved like they had somewhere to be. There are modern innings that feel longer than this entire game, and that should embarrass everyone in Major League Baseball today. The other thing that makes me mad is the way games like this get erased because they're not loud enough. If a guy throws a one-hitter in 86 minutes against Steve Carlton, that shouldn't be hidden trivia. That should be baseball candy forever. Houston's manager is Preston Gomez, Cuban-born baseball lifer, an important historical figure, even beyond this game. He was the first Latin American-born manager, to begin a major league season as skipper of a big league club. By 1974, he had already managed the expansion Padres before taking over the Astros. He never had a winning big league season as a manager, but he mattered as a teacher, an evaluator, an organizer, and overall baseball man. The 1974 season was his first in Houston. And Philadelphia's manager is Danny Ozark. He's another baseball lifer, but from a very different lane. Ozark was a longtime Dodgers organization man, a minor league slugger who never really became a major league player, then a coach, then a manager. He had taken over the Phillies in 1973, and this game catches him before the division title years, before the malapropisms became legend, before the whole Ozark story becomes its own Philly folktale. He is in the build phase here. Then the pitchers. Steve Carlton, already Steve Carlton. He's not yet the complete monument he'll become, but he's already terrifying. He just won the Cy Young in 1972 by going 27-10 for a terrible Phillies team. He became a 10-time All-Star, won 4 Cy Young Awards, struck out 4,136 batters, and go into the Hall of Fame in 1994. On this night, he gives up 1 run in 8 innings. He allows 4 hits, strikes out 5, and still gets handed the loss. Hey, that's baseball. Then there's Dave Roberts, not the manager people think of now, not the stolen base in 2004. A different Dave Roberts entirely. David Arthur Roberts, left-handed pitcher, born in Ohio, plagued by asthma as a child. Arm trouble early, shoulder trouble early, and smart enough to survive by becoming a finesse pitcher instead of pretending he was still a flamethrower. He reached the majors with the expansion Padres, had a brilliant 1971 season in San Diego, then was traded to Houston and did some of his best career work there. In 1973, he won 17 games, posted a 2.85 ERA, and set an Astros record with 6 shutouts. On August 24th, 1974, he reaches his cleanest single-game peak as an Astro. The obvious Hall of Fame names on the field are Steve Carlton and Mike Schmidt, both in Phillies uniforms, both still writing the early chapters of what will become immortality. Schmidt goes 0-for-3 with a strikeout here. Carlton, he's magnificent, but he loses anyways. And that's the kind of box score that reminds you, baseball doesn't care about your fame. The Astros don't counter with Hall of Famers in this particular lineup, but they do have some real weight. Cesar Cedeno in center, Bob Watson in left, Lee May at first, Doug Rader at third, and Greg Gross in right. This is not a soft Houston lineup. It's a lineup with professional hitters and good defenders, even if history has not built them all plaques. And that's part of what makes the matchup fun. Philadelphia has the larger marble names. Houston has the sharper team shape. I didn't find a famous quote war attached to the series, so I'm not going to invent it. But the season series already had a pulse. Before this game, the Phillies had gone 4-3 against Houston that year. They thumped the Astros 12-0 in Houston on June 10th, then split the rest of the meetings before arriving for this August series. Houston won the opener on August 23rd behind Larry Dierker, then won again here behind Roberts. By season's end, the clubs had split the 12-game season series with 6 wins each. So the tension is less blood feud and more divisional irritation. Remember, these are cross-division opponents inside the same league before later realignment changed everything. They really knew each other. They saw each other enough for habits and grudges and annoyances to form. Both teams had enough to play for that in a 1-0 game in late August still felt like a game with consequences, not background noise. Now, a nice little common thread detail, Mike Schmidt had already put a weird scar on the Astros' memory that season. On June 10th in the same matchup, he hit what may have been the longest base hit in Astrodome history, a ball that hit the roof and still only became a single. That's the kind of dome nonsense I deeply respect. Now, here's a very interesting side quest. My side quest here is the contrast between the two left-handers. Steve Carlton, we remember him as a superhuman. Dave Roberts is remembered, when he's remembered at all, as a clever pitcher. Carlton is force, and Roberts is management. Carlton is legend. Roberts, technique. And on this night, the baseball gods decided technique would have the spotlight. Carlton works 8 innings, gives up 1 run, and loses. Roberts works 9, gives up 1 hit, and becomes the star of the game. And that's a beautiful little baseball sermon. Sometimes the game belongs to the Titan. Sometimes it belongs to the craftsman. On August 24th, 1974, it belonged to the craftsman. Dave Roberts was born in Gallipolis, Ohio in 1944. He dealt with asthma as a kid and major arm trouble before he ever became established. The early version of him was supposed to be a hard thrower. The lasting version of him was smarter than that. He adapted. He became a control and movement left-hander, the kind of pitcher who understands sequence, tempo, and getting outs quickly could be its own weapon. Saber describes him as a pitcher who transformed himself from a hard thrower into a crafty control man, and that feels exactly right. He debuts with the expansion Padres in 1969 and became one of the better pitchers in their early history. 1971, he went 14-17 with a 2.10 ERA for a bad Padres club, and somehow finished second in the National League in earned run average. Then Houston traded for him before the 1972 season, believing he could strengthen an already interesting staff. His first Houston year, 1972, was uneven, but 1973 was excellent. He went 17-11, 2.85 ERA, 6 shutouts, and a club shutout record at the time. Roberts himself was modest about it, but he also understood his style. He worked fast and trusted the defense. He let contact happen on his terms. In 1974, even as he bristled at Preston Gomez's 5-man rotation, he still put together a sturdy year, and this game lands right in the middle of his best Houston stretch. He was also a competent hitter for a pitcher, which matters more in this era than people now remember. He batted .194 for his career, and in the early part of 1974, he even drove in runs at a surprising clip. None of that helps him at the plate tonight, where he goes 0 for 3 and strikes out 3 times. But that's almost funnier. Dave Roberts win a 1-0 duel with Steve Carlton while contributing nothing offensively, except the sort of stubbornness pitchers like to think counts as offense. After Houston, his career got messy. He lost footing in 1975, went AWOL briefly during that season, got traded after the year, resurfaced effectively with Detroit, and eventually landed on the 1979 Pittsburgh Pirates, where he got his first ring. He finished his major league career with 103 victories over 13 seasons. And then, in the cruel off-field footnote that often arrives too late, he dies in 2009 of lung cancer, reportedly linked to asbestos exposure from off-season Boilermaker work when he was young. So this is the man in the story, not a Hall of Famer, not a folk hero on the national scale, but a real major league craftsman with scars, skill, and one absolutely perfect Houston night. And the game itself is almost comically severe. Top of the first, Dave Cash grounds out, Larry Bowa grounds out, Mike Schmidt strikes out. 3 up, 3 down. Roberts immediately tells you this evening's going to be short. Bottom of the first, Greg Gross flies out, Roger Metzger grounds out, Cesar Cedeno grounds out. Carlton answers instantly. No nibbling, no theater, just efficiency. In the second inning, the Phillies get a little weird. Willie Montanez grounds out, and Bill Robertson strikes out. Ollie Brown strikes out too, but he reaches base on the passed ball because baseball likes to add one wrinkle to an otherwise neat inning. Mike Anderson then flies out and Roberts escapes. Houston gets its first half in the bottom half when Doug Rader singles to center, but Carlton strands him. Still no score. In the third, Bob Boone flies out, Carlton grounds out, and Dave Cash lines out. Bottom half, Larry Milbourne grounds out, Robert strikes out, and Greg Gross strikes out. Again, still nothing. It's like watching 2 men erase chalk as soon as it's drawn. In the fourth inning, Roberts gets Bowa on a fly ball, Schmidt on a grounder, and Montanez on another fly ball. Carlton walks Bob Watson in the bottom half, but Lee May hits into a force and nothing comes of it. In the fifth, Roberts brushes aside Bill Robinson, Ollie Brown, and Mike Anderson. Carlton walks Doug Rader, then picks him off first base while Milt May is still at the plate. And that pickoff becomes one of the top swing plays in the game, which is what happens when a 1-0 game is this starved for action. Then comes the Phillies' best chance and their only hit. Top 6, Bob Boone singles to left. That's it. That's the lone Phillies hit of the night. Steve Carlton bunt spoon to second, Dave Cash grounds out, and Larry Bowa strikes out. Roberts gives up one hit, one advance, and nothing else. That's the whole threat, if you can even call it that. Bottom 6. Carlton keeps moving. Roberts strikes out again. Gross grounds out. Metzger flies out. In the top of the 7th, Roberts retires Schmidt, Montañez, and Robinson. In the bottom of the 7th, Houston finally gets a little pressure. Cedeno grounds out. Watson singles. Lee May gets hit by a pitch, and suddenly there's 2 on with 1 out. But Doug Rader flies out, and Milt May grounds out. Inning over, still scoreless. Carlton still standing. Top of the 8th, Ollie Brown grounds out. Mike Anderson grounds out, and Bob Boone grounds out. Roberts is on the rails. Bottom of the 8th, finally the game breaks open. Larry Milbourne singles to left. Dave Roberts strikes out, because of course he does. Milbourne steals second. Greg Gross strikes out. 2 outs with the man on second. Scoreless game. And now Roger Metzger comes up. He singles to center, and Milbourne scores. Astros lead 1-0, and that's it. That's the game. The biggest play of the night is not a home run or a diving catch or a screaming double into the gap. It's Roger Metzger singling to center with 2 outs after Milbourne had done the hard part by getting himself into scoring position. Baseball can be gloriously plain-spoken like that sometimes. At the top of the 9th, Tony Taylor pinch hits for Carlton and grounds out. Dave Cash grounds out. Larry Bowa grounds out. Game over. 9 innings, 1 hit allowed by Roberts, 1 run allowed by Carlton. Houston wins it in 86 minutes. Roberts finished the shutout, and Carlton gets a hard luck loss. The Astros collect 4 hits in total, and the Phillies collect 1. If you love clean, ruthless, low-scoring baseball, this thing is indecently elegant. Now, as to what this game meant to Roberts, this game reads like a personal manifesto. He was never the most famous pitcher in the league. He was never going to overpower Steve Carlton in the imagination contest. But here he gets to show exactly what his version of greatness looked like. Pace, control, nerve, and trust. This was the only one-hitter of his career. It extended him to 26 2/3 straight scoreless innings, and it helped him earn National League Player of the Week, dated August 25th. More than that, though, it's the kind of game that explains him better than a career stat line does. If you want to understand Dave Roberts the Astro, start here. Not because it's loud, but because it's pure. For Houston, the win kept alive the idea that maybe this season still had a little bite left in it. The Astros had already beaten Philadelphia 1-0 the night before behind Larry Dierker, and now they did it again behind Roberts. Back-to-back shutouts against a team still trying to hang around the East race is not nothing, even if Houston ultimately finished at 500. Games like this are why that season still feels sturdier than the final standing alone would suggest. Now, for Philadelphia, this game is one more crack in the feeling of momentum. The Phillies had been tied for first on August 1st. By the end of this Houston series, they were under 500. That doesn't mean this single game killed their season, but it does mean the game belonged to the part of the season where the air started leaving the room. Now, a casual fan should care about this game because this is baseball stripped right down to its bones. You get a future Hall of Famer losing 1-0 despite pitching brilliantly. You get a one-hitter from a less famous lefty who worked so quickly the game disappeared in 86 minutes, and you get 1 run, manufactured by a single, a steal, and another single. And you get the Astrodome, which always makes everything feel a little more theatrical and a little more strange. If someone tells you baseball is boring, I would not show them a random 12-8 game. I might show them this, because this is tension with all the fat removed. All right, they didn't have press conferences back in 1974, as far as I can tell, so there isn't some famous post-game quote package attached to this game in any material that I checked. But you could feel the room anyways. Roberts would have been calm, almost dismissive, because that was part of his makeup. Carlton would have been the hard luck ace who knew he had done enough. Metzger would have the only swing anybody in Houston needed, and everybody else in that room would have been looking at the clock, because the game ended so fast, it probably still felt like batting practice just started. Sometimes the best post-game presser is the box score itself, and this is one of those nights. After this game, Houston did not turn this into a miracle run. The Astros finished 81-81, fourth in the West, 2-1 games behind the Dodgers. But the season still produced real individual value. Cedeno kept proving he was one of the most gifted players in baseball. Rader kept stacking gold gloves. Gross had his rookie breakthrough, and Roberts contributed another durable season before the organization started to tilt younger. Philadelphia likewise did not turn 1974 into a breakthrough. They finished 80 and 82, third in the East, 8 games back, but the structure was there. Schmidt and Carlton were there. Ozark was building something. The true breakthrough came later. This game lives in the frustrating middle. They're good enough to matter, but not yet good enough to last. After this game, Dave Roberts' life is a reminder that baseball lives are rarely linear. He finished his 1974 at 10 and 12 with a 3.40 ERA in 204 innings. In 1975, his role grew uncertain, and the relationship with Houston frayed. After the season, he got traded. They later had a strong year with Detroit in 1976, and eventually became part of the 1979 World Series champion Pirates. He ends with 103 career wins, which is a serious total for a pitcher who spent so much of his life adjusting around pain and limitation. He died in 2009, far too young at the age of 64. That gives this game an extra charge for me. You're not just watching a box score anymore, you're rescuing a night from disappearance. Next time we stay in the 1970s and move to Larry Dierker, April 9th, 1976. And that feels right, because if this episode is about craft and restraint and a game that hides, the next one is about one of the central Astros of the era, one of the real pillars, one of the men you simply cannot tell baseball history without. So tonight belongs to Dave Roberts. Next time, we get bigger. Next time, Dierker. That was Dave Roberts, August 24th, 1974. 1 hit allowed, 1 run scored. One of the fastest game in Astros history, and one of the cleanest little masterpieces you'll ever find in a box score. That's why we stopped for it. Thanks for watching Astros 100. I'll see you tomorrow.